Mr. Isaczai, welcome to Rudaw. I'm happy to have this interview for the second time with you.
Thank you so much, Nwenar, and I'm glad to be back at Rudaw and to tell your audience what we're doing.
Thank you a lot. Iraq has a plan now, Iraq's development plan. The Prime Minister announced that plan, and of course the UN is interested in this, and you've seen the plan too. What's your takes on the plan, and how do you see this plan from Iraq? I think it's from 2023 to 2028.
It's actually from 2024.
24.
To 28.
Yeah.
Thank you for asking this question. And first of all, I wanted to congratulate Prime Minister Mohammed Isaczai and also Deputy Prime Minister Mohammed Tamim and Minister of Planning for the development and launch of the National Development Plan. I'm also proud to say that the United Nations supported through technical assistance led by UNDP to the development of the plan. The plan is actually very ambitious and very comprehensive. It's an attempt to, another attempt to achieve Iraq's Vision 2030. The plan is also very much aligned with international agreement that Iraq has committed or been a party to, for example, the Sustainable Development Goals, the Paris Climate Agreement, the Migration Compact, and of course many other commitments and obligations that Iraq has. The plan is also has 5 programs, and these programs are really to promote and strengthen investment in human capital and skills, economic reform and economic diversification, transition to clean energy, investment in infrastructure, and of course in the area of social protection and more. I think one of the other things I like about the plan is that it also has very specific targets to achieve by 2028 or 2030. For example, it wants to, the plan is intended to reduce poverty by 15%, unemployment by 30%. It's also want to stabilize the population growth at 2.5%. As you know, Iraq has really a population growth which would be unsustainable in the long run. Most of all, it also planned to maintain a 4.24% GDP growth, but that's again depending on oil prices. Most importantly, we talked about oil prices, that since Iraq's economy is very dependent on oil, the plan is an effort to diversify the economy and to bring non-oil sector growth, especially, for example, investment in support to Iraqi producers in non-oil sector to improve Iraq's competitiveness. So there will be a facility for export promotion facility to make Iraq more competitive in the region and also in the global market.
It's actually an interesting plan, and I don't remember that if we look at Iraq in the previous years, there was lots of challenges, security challenges and other regional challenges. Iraq didn't really have a chance to address such problems. But before this national plan, the United Nations also had a plan, which is the United Nations Sustainable Cooperation Framework.
Yes.
And I think somehow, if we look at that plan, the targets are somehow the same. It's poverty, sustainability, and how this Iraqi national plan is aligned with the UN's plan.
Well, I think I would put it the other way around. How is the UN plan aligned to National Development Plan? Because our policy as the UN in all countries around the world is that we have to align our plan to national priorities and plan. Because our role as the UN is to support the government plan, not our own plan. And of course, in most cases, our plan and government plan are very much synchronized, because if the government of Iraq is focusing on SDGs, for us that's really an important aspect. So our current cooperation framework, I will use cooperation framework or cooperation agreement because the name is very long, UN Sustainable Development Cooperation Framework. So I will only call it the UN Cooperation Framework. The current one is ending, and we are now developing a new one that starts in 2025 and cover 5 years and go until 2029. So our new plan actually very much aligned and is in support of the National Development Plan. In fact, we postponed or we delayed the development of our plan, waiting for the launch of the National Development Plan to make sure that there is alignment with the National Development Plan. For example, I can give you some very specific. In fact, in our new plan, which is now under government review, and we hope to launch it by end of the year, and I hope Rudaw will do a specific or special feature on it, because it's for all of Iraq, including the Kurdistan region. Our plan is, if we look at our plan, we've done a mapping how some of the 4 areas that we support is supporting also some of the national programs that the Iraqi government is trying to implement, especially focusing on poverty reduction, employment, climate change, social protection, and I would say rule of law and governance. That's something that is also very much for us an important area. I also wanted to say that we have 4 pillars in our UN cooperation framework. The first pillar is focusing on social protection services, and that is health, education, water and sanitation, and of course social protection in terms of government support to very vulnerable and poor people, especially IDPs and people with disabilities. Iraq has a large number of people with disabilities. So we're trying to help the line ministries on how to improve access and the quality of service to the population. For example, Iraq is being monitored on a lot of indicators. How do we reduce maternal and child mortality? How do we reduce the dropout rate from schools, especially for girls and young people? How do we invest more in early education? Because education is the foundation for the future of Iraq. How do we expand educational services? Because right now, also infrastructure, there's overcrowding in many of the Iraqi schools. In the area of health, we would like to help Iraq provide universal access to health services to all its citizens. How do we improve the quality of health services so that Iraqis don't have to travel abroad and spend money on health services? So our role is very technical. In the same way, in the area of economic diversification, we would like to invest more and support Iraq in scaling up the skills through technical vocational training program. In fact, after your interview, I will be going in Kurdistan to a project that UNESCO and EU is implementing with EU funding in UNESCO. And this is, of course, how do we improve vocational training in the area of agriculture. In the area of economic diversification, again, our focus will be very much on small, medium enterprises. The engine of growth and diversification of economy comes from small, medium enterprises. Big companies have their role, but if we have to create jobs, we have to invest in small, medium enterprises. Provide access to them to finance. Help them in financial literacy, how to even prepare a basic business plan. So we will be doing a lot of these modeling. I call it modeling and pilots, hoping that the Iraqi government would scale them up. And because it has to, we don't have the resources to do it. in the area of, and also value chain development. How do we bring those products to the local market and to the international market? And make the informal economy more formal, because that way then it's also revenue generated through taxes for the treasury, for the Iraqi government. So those will be on the employment. In the area of climate change, of course, there will be a question on that, so I'll
Yes,
respond
my
to it.
next question actually is about climate change. When we talk about all these vocational training, take everything in Iraq, because Iraq is, according to UN, is one of the most, 5 most affected countries in the region by climate change. So this is a big challenge, even if we talk about development in the agricultural sector, but on the other hand, we have climate change and its effect on Iraq. How this, I mean, in all these goals, how climate change is considered to be addressed or dealt with?
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right in terms of Iraq being one of the most severely affected countries globally by the global warming and climate change. And of course, Iraq's dependence on the 2 rivers, the Tigris and Euphrates, has really had a devastating impact. The reduction of waters in this river, the level of the low level of precipitation and rainfall in the past, I would say 20, 30 years, have really had a very negative impact on farmers and also on population. We have statistics now that close to 37,000 people in the south have migrated, have been displaced because of the climate change impact. And of course, this has an impact on sunstorm, frequent sunstorm, and also droughts and desertification. So the impact is very cascading. Iraq cannot afford to remain indifferent to the impact of the climate change. So it is important that for Iraq, that all budgetary prevention, all investment laws are seen from the lens of climate change. It's absolutely essential. How do we invest in smart agriculture? How do we conserve water? As you know, 90% of current water in the 2 rivers are polluted, surface water. That is according to the statistics from the Ministry of Water. There's a lot of leakage, so water governance and efficient use of water is absolutely essential. How do we invest in smart agriculture? How do we invest in modern irrigation system and techniques? How do we bring, for example, drought-resilient seeds and probably not spend water or invest in crops that are very water-heavy and incentive? So there must be a huge shift in agriculture policies, in water management, and also in public behavior. I see that Iraqis as a public, the government can do so much. We as a UN launched a water campaign 2 months ago with the Ministry of Water. The whole purpose is, and I also invite your TV station to advocate and to inform the public about conservation of water. How do we conserve water even at a personal level? So I think for us as a UN, we are focusing, this is one pillar of our support in the next 5 years, and I would be a little bit more specific. At 2 levels, we're supporting the climate change agenda. One, at the policy and regulatory level, because Iraq has international obligation under the Paris Climate Agreement, SDGs, and a few other agreements. That there's the Convention on Biodiversity, and also many other aspects of the Convention on Water and so forth. So in the policy area, we have now helped Iraq to come up with an adaptation plan, a mitigation plan. We have also helped a lot, worked with the Ministry of, also Parliament and also Prime Minister Office and others to revise the renewable energy law. Iraq's contribution to renewable energy right now is only 5%. In Iraq, electricity comes from 5%. It's heavily reliant on fossil fuel. Because also Iraq needs to do its part to reduce its carbon footprint, because Iraq has one of the dense, dense carbon footprint globally. That means that Iraq's carbon emission per GDP is higher than many countries. That's because of gas flaring. How do we capture gas flaring? And I'm very happy that the current government under Prime Minister Soudani has been investing a lot to capture the gas from oil production and turn it into clean energy. So Iraq also needs to make a transition in that. Also for us in the area, I talked about the policy. One of the other important areas that we are now helping Iraq, actually two areas. One is how Iraq can effectively participate in the various conference of parties, or we call it COPs. Again, the UN agencies are supporting Iraq. We're building their capacity of the negotiator to actually effectively negotiate and participate in COP28 and COP29 and any other international mechanism. Why this is important? Because Iraq needs to make its case to the world that they are the most affected. Iraq needs to access international finance by the fact that it is not Iraq's fault for being affected, and the people have to pay the price for the climate change impact. So we're helping Iraqis also to participate effectively. Lastly, we're also helping Iraq to revise its, what we call it, nationally determined contribution. That's the Iraqis' targets under the climate change, what we call it NDC. So we're helping Iraq to revise its NDC target because the current targets are very low, so that Iraq become an effective leader in the region in terms of responding to the impact of climate change and so on. In the area of water, I'm pleased to say that under my leadership, we have created a water task force in the UN so that we can provide policy and technical advice to the government on proper integrated water management issues. We have also a lot of projects in the south and also even in Kurdistan on tree plantation, on afforestation, on water treatment, wastewater treatment, and also how do we revive the and protect the marshes in the south, which is the UNESCO World Heritage Site, and a lot of we have indigenous people who have for centuries lived on this in this area. So for us, climate change is a priority, and we are happy to support Iraq in this.
Mr. Isaczai, how is the UN is helping Iraq with the Sustainable Development Agenda, SDG?
SDG.
Yeah, goals.
Thank you for asking. And this is extremely important for Iraq, because globally, we're not doing very well on SDG. And Iraq is also have a mixed result on SDG. For example, Iraq has so far achieved only 6 of the 17 goals. It's on track to achieve 5 goals by the end of 2030, and it's actually regressing on 3 goals. So as you could see, we have only 6 years to achieve the SDG, and these are Iraqi goals. These are not UN, yes, but we support Iraq in this. I think part of the issue is that Iraq's also, in terms of standing globally, Iraq SDG index score is 64, which places it 108 out of 169 countries. So I think Iraq needs to do more to achieve the SDG. It also has only achieved 42% of the SDG targets. So there's a lot of work for us to be done. I think Iraq's national development plan, if implemented, and if there are resources and finances behind it, will make a huge progress and leap in achieving the Sustainable Development Goal. And as the UN, our own cooperation framework is very much aligned and designed to help Iraq achieve the SDGs.
Regarding water, I interviewed the Minister of Water Resources 3 times so far, and the numbers and the statistics he talks about scares me, actually, because Iraq is in a situation, yet Iraq per capita has enough water, but there's a big problem when it comes to water management in Iraq and how to be efficient.
Absolutely.
This is what the minister told me. He said, I am still, as the minister, I provide Iraq with the water that it needs, but I cannot deal with the waste. Because on the other side, there are Ministry of Agriculture. And as he says, 90% of the waste we have in this sector. And Iraq needs to change this irrigation system. I think the irrigation system goes back to the Babylon time and Sumerian time, is by flooding the fields and the water goes wasted. Yeah. And this is again the same case between Iraq and Turkey. Iraq is calling for more share in Euphrates and also Tigris River, but Turkey, we heard it from politicians and ministers in Turkey, they say, we do give Iraq enough share of its water, but the problem is in Iraq in managing the water and controlling the waste. So I think water management is one of the key issues that Iraq is facing.
And also, one other scary statistic is that by 2050, Iraq would see further 20% reduction in its surface water and rainfall. And so which means that we need to take action now. 2050 is not too far away. Yeah. So it's only 25 years away.
Yes.
So I think it is, as you said, the power of technology, looking at alternative crops, drought-resistant crops, it is extremely important. For example, Iraq used to produce a lot of rice. Rice is a very intensive, water-intensive crop. Also, I see in many countries now, even in the United States, they use drone technology for irrigation. They use drone technology for irrigation. You have actually a drone attached to a pipe that goes and only irrigates area that needs irrigation. So I think we need to invest, or Iraq needs to invest in really modern irrigation techniques. But it's not just agriculture is the lion's share, but also in industry. A lot of water goes also for oil production. Yeah. And therefore, how do we, find alternative ways? Water that goes to water that's not recycled, wastewater treatment. And then most importantly, of course, Iraq does not get a lot of rain, but the rain it gets, how do we harvest this rain? Rainwater harvesting is also a technique. So, and these are areas we're happy to support Iraq.
Yeah. My last question will be about IDPs, and it's still a problem in Iraq, not totally solved. And how do you support Iraq in this area? I mean, in a sustainable way, in a way to end this problem, not just to, manage it day by day. What's the latest regarding this, Mr. Isaczai?
No, thank you. This is a very important file for us. First of all, let me say that Iraq has that really very good in terms of returning, more than 5 million IDPs, after the defeat of Daesh. So what we are now dealing with is roughly 1.1 million IDPs, both in formal camps, which most of them are in Kurdistan region, but also quite a large number of them in informal settlement, we call them. And why they are informal? Because some of these people, even though their camps were closed in 2020, 2021 by the federal government, they are not able to return to their area of origin. And that's where I'm going to start answering your question. So there are several challenges that with regard to the return of IDPs. First, political and security. As I mentioned, some of the IDPs are not able to return because there are political issues. Their areas, they're not able to return to their area of origin, or there are security issues. Secondly, there's a huge issue with housing. Their housings are damaged, and therefore there's a need for rehabilitation of their housing, or giving them, new set of housing alternative or arrangement. Thirdly, the majority of these people have not still received compensation. Compensation is so essential that if these compensation are regularly provided, they will be able to rebuild their homes themselves. Fourth, some of the areas that are damaged or insecure also lacks services, health, education, water, electricity,
Sewage.
sewage.
Everything.
So that, and then of course there are issues with families have expanded. Families are now, if it was one family, now it's 4 families. So that creates again a need for housing, but also additional services, including some of the IDPs lack even civil documentation or identity card to allow them to access services. Let me focus also on the situation of IDPs, for example, specifically in Kurdistan that are in formal camps. We still have roughly 250,000 IDPs that are in over 21 camps in Erbil and also in Duhok. The majority of these people are Yazidis. And again, as we know, these people went through a horrific experience during Daesh. They are coming from Sinjar. So the situation in Sinjar is again very problematic, both in terms of political security, but also infrastructure. If you go to the city, there are some infrastructure that has been built, but if you look at some of the surrounding, it's still, so there are, I think there's a need for normalizing the situation of IDPs, for return of IDPs. The conditions are right. Now, where does the UN stand on this? So we as a UN actually have been working with the Ministry of Migration and Displacement, but also with the Ministry of Interior in Kurdistan to come up with what we call it a durable solution roadmap. A durable solution roadmap is an 18-month plan to completely end the displacement in Iraq. And the durable solution roadmap actually looks at all the items I listed as challenges: compensation, housing, services, infrastructure, and therefore, for us, we are waiting for the governments on both sides, to adopt this durable solution roadmap. It would really end the IDP situation. Of course, we're still involved in some level of support for IDPs in the camps, and also out of camp we provide limited cash support, and also those who are voluntarily wanting to return, we facilitate that through an IOM program, and we also provide them with some support when they go back to their communities. What is important is that these Iraqis, these are Iraqis, these are not from another country. Ultimately, the solution is for them to be integrated in the Iraqi society, but also in Iraqi government services. For example, they need to be featured on the Ministry of Labor and Social Affairs protection program to get support from them, or the PDS, the public distribution system for food. They need to be connected to all of that. So ultimately, that's the solution, to move from humanitarian to development and sustainable development.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ghulam Isaczai. It was a pleasure to have this talk and interview with you.
Thank you very much
again.
for having me.
Thank you.